It'll secure the family name. Don't worry, she'll do what's right. My mother's voice drifted up the stairs, sharp and clear despite her attempt to whisper. I froze on the landing, my hand gripping the polished banister. The evening light cast long shadows through the Charleston home where generations of Quinns had lived their perfectly choreographed lives. She's always been such a good girl, my mother continued. Madison understands duty. I didn't move. In 24 years, I'd learned that eavesdropping was sometimes the only way to learn the truth in this house. The Westons have been more than patient. Yes, it's all arranged for next month. She'll make a beautiful bride. The word bride hit me like ice water. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping on the antique runner. When my mother ended her call and found me standing in the doorway of her study, her smile was practice perfection. Madison, darling, you should be in bed. Big day tomorrow, brunch with the Westons. Who am I marrying? The question fell from my lips before I could stop it. Her smile flickered but didn't fade. What are you talking about? I heard you, Mom. Who am I marrying? She set down her phone with deliberate care. You were listening to a private conversation. And you were arranging my life without asking me. She sighed, brushing an invisible piece of lint from her silk blouse. Madison Quinn, sit down. I didn't move. Caleb Weston, she finally said. You've met him several times. Handsome. Harvard Business School. His family's company practically built half of Charleston. Memory flashed. A tall man with serious eyes at charity galas, nodding politely from across the room. We might have exchanged 10 sentences in our lives. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. The Westons are a respectable family, and we owe them a great deal. Owe them what? Her eyes hardened. That's between adults. I am an adult. Then act like one. Sometimes we make sacrifices for family. I felt my throat tighten. Dad would never have asked this of me. It was a low blow. My father had been gone for 12 years, but his absence remained the one wound my mother couldn't conceal. Your father. She began then stopped. Your father left us in a precarious position. There are things you don't understand. Then explain them. She shook her head. The Westons helped us after your father died. Financial matters. So I'm what? Repayment. Don't be crude. This is an advantageous match. Caleb is respectable, responsible. You could do far worse. I was accepted to the MFA program in New York, I whispered. I want to write. I want to live my own life. Silly dreams, Madison. What have I always taught you? Security first. I don't even know him. You'll have a lifetime to learn. She stood, smoothing her skirt. The announcement runs in the paper next week. The wedding is in 6 weeks. 6 weeks? That's insane. I've been planning for months. Everything is arranged. And if I refuse? Her face changed then, a flash of something desperate in her eyes. You'll ruin everything if you back out. Everything I've worked for. Everything I've protected you from. Later that night, I sat on my bedroom floor surrounded by acceptance letters to writing programs and half-finished manuscripts that no one had ever read. When my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, I almost ignored it. Hello, Madison. This is Caleb Weston. I believe we should talk. 6 weeks later, I stood at the back of St. Michael's Church, gripping a bouquet of white peonies so tightly my knuckles matched the petals. 200 people had turned to watch me walk toward a man I barely knew. My mother kissed my cheek before the doors opened. You look beautiful, she whispered. Everything is perfect. As the wedding march began, I took my first step down the aisle, feeling my heart breaking with every footfall that brought me closer to the man standing at the altar, tall, handsome, and as trapped as I was. You may kiss the bride. Caleb's lips touched mine briefly, formally, like signing the final page of a contract. The assembled crowd applauded as if they'd witnessed something beautiful instead of a transaction. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Mr. and Mrs. Caleb Weston. The reception was a blur of faces and congratulations. I smiled until my cheeks hurt, posed for photographs, cut the 5-tier cake with Caleb's hand artificially placed over mine. His touch was courteous but distant, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. You're doing wonderfully, my mother whispered as she embraced me. The Harrington Smiths can't stop talking about how elegant everything is. I nodded mechanically, watching Caleb across the room as he shook hands with elderly relatives. He moved with the confidence of someone who had been trained since birth for these social obligations. I need to rest, I finally said, when the room began to close in on me. Just for a few minutes. My mother frowned but nodded. 20 minutes, then you need to be back for the toasts. The bridal suite at the Charleston Harbor Resort was decorated in whites and blues, with a view of the water that should have been calming. I locked the door behind me and stood motionless in the center of the room. With trembling fingers, I removed the diamond earrings that had belonged to my grandmother. Next came the pearl-encrusted veil, then the painful hairpins that had secured my elaborate updo. I stepped out of the custom heels that pinched my toes and sat on the edge of the bed in my wedding dress, feeling the weight of the silk and lace surrounding me like a cage. When the first tear fell, I didn't bother to wipe it away. Another followed, then another, until I was sobbing. Not the delicate weeping of a bride overwhelmed with joy, but the raw, gasping cries of someone mourning a life that would never be. I cried for the writing career I'd never have, for the New York apartment I'd dreamed about, for all the stories inside me that would remain untold. I cried for the little girl who had once believed her mother when she said, "You can be anything you want to be, Madison." Most of all, I cried because at 24 years old I still didn't know how to say no. A soft knock at the door made me freeze. "Madison." Caleb's voice. "Your mother sent me to check on you." I didn't answer, hoping he would leave. "Madison, I know you're in there." "I'll be out soon," I called, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just fixing my makeup." Silence then. "Can I come in?" "No, Please." Something in his voice, a gentleness I hadn't expected, made me rise and unlock the door. Caleb stood there in his tailored tuxedo, his dark hair slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. His eyes widened at the sight of me, tear-stained and half undone. "I told them you were feeling unwell," he said, stepping inside and closing the door. "They're pushing back the toasts." I turned away, embarrassed by my red eyes and smudged makeup. "I'll pull myself together." "Don't," he said quietly. I looked at him in confusion. Instead of speaking, he crossed to where I stood and lowered himself to sit on the floor, his back against the bed. After a moment's hesitation, he patted the space beside him. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Sitting," he replied. "Join me." Awkwardly, I gathered my enormous skirt and sank down next to him, careful to leave space between us. We sat in silence, staring at the wall. "I didn't want this either," he finally said. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "But I wanted you to know, you're not alone in this." Fresh tears welled up. "Then why did you agree?" He sighed, a sound so heavy with resignation that I turned to look at him. For the first time, I noticed the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. "Family," he said simply. "Isn't that why you're here too?" I nodded, unable to speak. "My father made it clear that this marriage was important, that your family and ours have a special arrangement dating back to when your father was alive. My mother mentioned something about financial help after Dad died." "It's more complicated than that," Caleb said. "But yes, our families have been intertwined for a long time." We sat in silence again, strangers bound by vows we'd just spoken before God and 200 of Charleston's finest. "What happens now?" I finally asked. Caleb reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a handkerchief, offering it to me. "Now we figure out how to live with the choices that were made for us." I took the handkerchief, noting the monogrammed CW in the corner. "I don't even know your middle name." A small smile touched his lips. "James. Caleb James Weston. And your favorite color?" "What?" "We should probably know these things about each other." "Your favorite color?" "Green," I said. "Dark green like pine trees." He nodded seriously as if filing away this information. "Mine's blue. Navy blue." I couldn't help it, I laughed. The sound was strange in the quiet room, almost sacrilegious against my earlier tears. "There," he said, his smile widening slightly. "That's better." When he reached out and gently took my hand, I didn't pull away. His palm was warm against mine, and for a brief moment, the weight on my chest lightened. "I think," he said carefully, "that we might be able to find a way through this. Together." As we sat on the floor of the bridal suite, hand in hand, I realized it was the first time since this nightmare began that I didn't feel completely alone. Our honeymoon was postponed. Caleb claimed an urgent work matter, and I was quietly relieved. Instead, we moved into his downtown apartment, a sleek, minimalist space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. "The guest room is yours," he said on our first night, showing me a pristine room with a queen bed and attached bathroom. "I thought you'd want your own space." "Thank you," I said, setting down my suitcase. I hadn't brought much. Most of my belongings were still at my mother's house. "We should talk about arrangements," Caleb said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "Arrangements? How we want to handle this? Our marriage." I sat on the edge of the bed. "I guess we're roommates for now?" He nodded. "Roommates sounds right. But we'll need to appear convincing in public. Of course. Can't let Charleston society suspect anything's amiss with the perfect Weston-Quinn union." He flinched slightly at my tone. "It's not just that. My parents and your mother would make things difficult if they thought we weren't trying." "Trying to what?" "Fall in love on command. To make the best of it," he corrected gently. That first week passed in awkward politeness. We circled each other cautiously, establishing routines. Caleb left early for work at Weston Financial Group and returned late. I unpacked, explored the apartment, and tried to ignore the gnawing emptiness inside me. On the 7th night, I found him in the kitchen at midnight making a sandwich. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, glancing up. I shook my head. "Too quiet. I'm used to the creaks in my mother's old house." "Hungry?" "A little." He gestured to his elaborate sandwich. "I can make you one." "That thing is a monstrosity," I said, looking at the towering creation. He grinned, the first real smile I'd seen from him. "Midnight calories don't count." As we ate at the kitchen island, silence gave way to tentative conversation. "So," I ventured, "what do you actually do at Weston Financial?" "Officially? I'm Executive VP of Client Relations." He took a bite of his sandwich. "Unofficially? I'm the son who does what he's told." "Sounds familiar. What about you? What did you do before this?" "I worked at an art gallery. Part-time. My mother called it my hobby job." "And what did you want to do?" The question caught me off guard. No one in my family had asked that in years. "I write," I said hesitantly. "Or I used to. I was accepted to an MFA program in New York." His eyes lit with interest. "What do you write?" "Short stories mostly. Literary fiction." I shrugged. "Nothing published." "Why not?" "My mother thought it was impractical. A distraction." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "My father wanted me to study law. I spent a year at Harvard Law before switching to business." "What did you want to study?" "Music." He smiled at my surprised expression. "Classical piano specifically. I still play sometimes, but not like I used to." The conversation shifted then, becoming easier. We discovered a shared love for Gabriel Garcia Marquez and a mutual hatred of reality television. He admitted to being a terrible cook despite his midnight sandwich skills. I confessed my habit of reading the last page of books first. "You're kidding," he said, looking horrified. "That ruins everything. It prepares me. If I know it ends badly, I'm emotionally ready." That's literary sacrilege." I found myself laughing. Says the man who admitted to using Cliff's Notes for Moby Dick. That book is 900 pages about whale hunting. I stand by my decision. As weeks passed, these midnight conversations became our ritual. In the daylight, we maintained our careful distance, but nights belonged to slow revelations and unexpected common ground. One evening, I came home to find a package on my bed. A sleek laptop with a note, "For your stories. Everyone needs the right tools." See, I found him in the living room, reading through work documents. "You didn't have to do this," I said, holding the laptop. He looked up. I wanted to. Why? He set down his papers. Because you shouldn't have to give up your dreams just because our paths got redirected. That night, I opened the laptop and began to write for the first time in 2 years. The words came slowly at first, then faster, as if a dam had broken. When I finally looked up, dawn was breaking over the harbor. Gradually, our daytime interactions thawed as well. We developed inside jokes. He started asking my opinion on work matters. I found myself saving funny stories to tell him later. We learned to navigate social events as a convincing couple, our rehearsed affection becoming less forced with practice. You're doing much better, my mother observed during a lunch date. I knew you'd see reason. It's not what you think, I said. Oh. Her perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. Then what is it? I struggled to define what was happening between Caleb and me. We weren't in love, but we weren't just pretending anymore either. We had become something unexpected, friends. We're figuring it out, I finally said. Well, figure it out faster, she replied, checking her watch. People are starting to talk about when you'll have children. That night, I told Caleb about the conversation. We were sitting on the balcony, sharing a bottle of wine. Children, he repeated, swirling the red liquid in his glass. That would certainly complicate things. We haven't even. I felt my cheeks warm. No, we haven't. His voice was gentle. And we won't unless both of us want to. Is that even possible? A marriage without. It's our marriage, Madison. We make the rules. I studied his profile in the moonlight. But you might want children someday. Maybe. He turned to face me. But not as part of an arrangement. Not to satisfy expectations. For the first time, I wondered what it would be like to truly be Caleb's wife. Not just in name but in all ways. The thought both terrified and intrigued me. What are you thinking? He asked softly. That I didn't expect you, I admitted. When my mother told me about this marriage, I imagined someone cold. Controlling. Like your mother? I nodded. I'm not her, he said. And you're not required to be her daughter anymore. He reached across the space between us and took my hand. You can be whoever you want to be, Madison. His words unleashed something inside me. Hope, possibility, freedom. Without thinking, I leaned forward and kissed him. It was brief and impulsive, nothing like our formal wedding kiss. When I pulled back, his eyes were wide with surprise. I'm sorry, I began. Don't be, he whispered and drew me back to him. You're sure about this? I asked, smoothing the front of my dress. We don't have to go. It's my parents' anniversary party, Caleb replied, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Attendance is mandatory in the Weston family bylaws. Do they actually have family bylaws? He shot me a wry smile. Would you be surprised if they did? 3 months into our arrangement, we had developed a comfortable rhythm. By day, Caleb worked while I volunteered at a local literacy center and quietly submitted stories to literary magazines. Evenings were ours, cooking experiments, walks along the harbor, long conversations that often lasted until midnight. We still maintained separate bedrooms, but the line between friendship and something more had begun to blur since that night on the balcony. The Weston's anniversary celebration was being held at their sprawling estate on Kiowa Island. As we drove through the iron gates, I felt the familiar tightening in my chest that accompanied all high society functions. Remember, Caleb said, taking my hand as we approached the entrance, we have an exit strategy if needed. Food poisoning works wonders. His small acts of alliance had become my anchor in these situations. A squeeze of the hand when conversations grew tense. A subtle eye roll when someone was particularly pretentious. The silent understanding that we were in this together. The party was everything I expected. Ostentatious floral arrangements, champagne fountains, Charleston's elite informal were exchanging pleasantries and thinly veiled gossip. My mother arrived fashionably late, immediately drawing attention in her designer gown. Madison, darling, she air-kissed both my cheeks. You look comfortable. I smoothed my simple blue dress, chosen specifically because Caleb had once mentioned he liked the color on me. Thanks, Mom. Her eyes darted to where Caleb stood talking with his father. How are things progressing? What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean. She lowered her voice. The Westons are expecting grandchildren. It's been 3 months. We're taking our time, I said firmly. She sighed. Time is a luxury, Madison. Especially for women. Before I could respond, Caleb appeared at my side, sliding his arm around my waist with practiced ease. Mrs. Quinn, you look lovely tonight. My mother's demeanor instantly warmed. Caleb dear, I was just telling Madison how stunning the party is. Your mother always had impeccable taste. She'll be thrilled to hear you think so. His tone was perfectly cordial, but his hand pressed reassuringly against my back. If you'll excuse us, I promised Madison a dance. As he led me to the dance floor, I whispered, There's no dancing happening. There is now, he replied, taking my hand and drawing me into a formal waltz position just as the string quartet began a new piece. You're rescuing me a lot these days, I said as we moved across the floor. Maybe I just wanted to dance with my wife. The word still felt strange, wife, but less foreign than it once had. As Caleb guided me through the steps, I recognized faces watching us from the edges of the room. My mother, his parents, all of them evaluating, assessing. They're all staring, I murmured. Let them, he said, and pulled me closer than proper form dictated. By midnight, the party had evolved from formal dinner to casual mingling. I found myself trapped in conversation with my mother and Caleb's mother, Catherine Weston, a formidable woman with perfect posture and calculating eyes. The garden club would love to have you join, Madison, Catherine was saying. Every Weston wife has been a member for generations. I'm not much of a gardener, I admitted. Oh, it's not about gardening, my mother interjected. It's about connections. Influence. Madison has been focused on her writing, Caleb said, appearing with fresh drinks. She's quite talented. My mother's smile tightened. Her little stories. Yes, she's always had such an active imagination. They're more than little stories, Caleb continued smoothly. She's been published in 3 literary journals this month alone. I stared at him in shock. I'd submitted to several publications but hadn't heard back from any. Catherine looked confused. I wasn't aware you were a writer, Madison. She's extraordinary, Caleb said, his eyes never leaving mine. You should read her work sometime. My mother laughed dismissively. Creative hobbies are lovely, but hardly a focus for a Weston wife. Madison understands her priorities now. And what priorities would those be? Caleb asked, his voice deceptively casual. Family, of course. Social obligations. Supporting your career. My mother sipped her champagne. The things that matter. Writing matters to Madison, Caleb said. His tone remained pleasant, but I detected an edge beneath it. And what matters to her matters to me. An uncomfortable silence fell over our group. Catherine excused herself to check on other guests, leaving me alone with my mother and Caleb. You're embarrassing yourself, my mother hissed once Catherine was out of earshot. Both of you. This isn't how things are done. Maybe it's time for things to be done differently, Caleb suggested. My mother's eyes narrowed. This arrangement wasn't made so you could play at being rebels. There are expectations. Mom, please, I began. We're leaving, Caleb interrupted, taking my hand. Thank you for a lovely evening. As we walked away, I heard my mother call after us. Madison, don't you dare make a scene. But Caleb's grip was firm as he led me through the crowd toward the exit. We were nearly at the door when his father intercepted us. Leaving so soon? Richard Weston asked, his smile not reaching his eyes. Early meeting tomorrow, Caleb replied smoothly. Richard nodded, then lowered his voice. A word, son? In private. Caleb hesitated, then squeezed my hand. Wait for me by the car. I stood in the cool night air, watching moths flutter around the ornate garden lights. Inside, I could see silhouettes through the windows, Caleb and his father in what appeared to be an intense conversation. When he finally emerged, his jaw was set in a hard line. Everything okay? I asked as we drove away from the estate. Fine, he said tersely. Then softer. I'm sorry about all that. You don't need to apologize. But, did you mean what you said? About my writing being published? A small smile broke through his tension. Check your email. I saw the notifications come in last week, but wanted to surprise you tonight. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was waiting for the right moment. He glanced at me. When I saw how they were dismissing something you care about, it seemed like the perfect time to set the record straight. We drove in silence for a while, the road dark except for our headlights. No one's ever defended me like that before, I finally said. Caleb reached across the console and took my hand. Get used to it. When we arrived home, neither of us seemed ready for the night to end. We stood on the balcony, looking out at the moonlight reflecting on the harbor water. What did your father say to you? I asked. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. He reminded me of my obligations. To the family name. To our arrangement. The mysterious arrangement no one will explain to me. He turned to face me. Madison, there are things about our families, about why this marriage happened, that are complicated. Then uncomplicate them for me. He shook his head. Not tonight. Tonight I just want. What? Instead of answering, he stepped closer and brushed a strand of hair from my face. His touch lingered, fingers tracing down my cheek to the curve of my neck. I want to stop pretending, he finally said. Pretending what? That this is still just an arrangement. His voice dropped to a whisper. That I'm not falling for you. The admission hung between us, changing everything. When he leaned down and kissed me, it wasn't like our wedding kiss or even our impulsive kiss weeks earlier. It was deliberate, certain, a declaration. That night, I didn't go to the guest room. As Caleb held me close in his bed, I realized with startling clarity that somewhere between resentment and resignation, I had found something I never expected, a choice that was finally my own. The next morning, I woke to find Caleb sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, holding an envelope. What's that? I asked, sitting up. A job offer, he said. In London. Executive position with an investment firm. My heart seemed to stop. London. I applied months ago. Before the wedding. He turned the envelope over in his hands. They want an answer by next week. Are you going to take it? He met my eyes. I don't know. Would you come with me if I did? The question caught me off guard. I don't know. My writing is just starting to get published here. And London is so far. From what? Your mother? The life you never wanted. It's not that simple. It could be. He handed me the envelope. Just think about it. As he left for work, I sat among tangled sheets, staring at the envelope that threatened to disrupt the fragile happiness we'd begun to build. The envelope sat on our kitchen counter for days, a constant reminder of the choice looming before us. Caleb and I circled around the topic, our newfound intimacy suddenly shadowed by uncertainty. I looked up the literary scene in London, he said one evening as we prepared dinner. It's vibrant. You might find inspiration there. I might, I agreed cautiously. But the truth was, the prospect of London terrified me, not because I didn't want to go, but because I did. It represented a clean break, a fresh start far from my mother's influence and Charleston's expectations. The thought was both exhilarating and paralyzing. On Friday afternoon, I stopped by my mother's house to pick up more of my belongings. I'd been gradually moving things to Caleb's apartment, now our apartment, but much of my life remained boxed in my childhood bedroom. I found my mother in her sunroom, phone pressed to her ear. She waved me in without interrupting her conversation. Yes, it's progressing as expected, she was saying. Though there was that scene at the anniversary party. No, I've spoken with Catherine. We're on the same page. I began to leave, not wanting to eavesdrop, when her next words froze me in place. The London offer? Oh, he'll turn it down. Richard will see to that. Then we can move forward with finding something more suitable for Madison once he leaves. My blood ran cold. Once he leaves. Of course she doesn't know, my mother continued, lowering her voice. That was the agreement from the beginning. I backed out of the room silently and fled to my old bedroom, heart pounding. What agreement? What did she mean by once he leaves? As I mechanically packed books into boxes, my mind raced. The arrangement between our families. The marriage that happened too quickly. The job offer that would take Caleb away. Was it all connected? Had Caleb known all along that this was temporary? By the time I returned to our apartment, darkness had fallen and rain pelted against the windows. Caleb wasn't home yet. Late meeting, he texted, giving me too much time to stew in my suspicions and hurt. When he finally arrived, rain-soaked and tired, I was waiting in the living room with the London job offer in my hands. "Madison," he called, shaking water from his coat. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" I switched on a lamp. "Is our marriage temporary?" He froze. "What?" "I heard my mother on the phone today. She said something about, once he leaves, about finding someone more suitable for me after you're gone." I held up the envelope. "Is that what this is about? Your escape plan?" Caleb sank into the chair opposite me, running a hand through his damp hair. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me. The truth this time. What is this arrangement between our families?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Your father and mine were business partners. When your father died, he left significant debts that would have ruined your family. My father covered those debts in exchange for certain considerations. Like me marrying you." "Yes." The confirmation hurt more than I expected. "So I was the payment." "It wasn't supposed to be like that. The original agreement was a merger of family assets, but over time, my father became fixated on the idea of a marriage. Traditional, old-fashioned values. And you agreed." He nodded slowly. "I did. At first because I felt obligated. My father made it clear that if I refused, he would call in the debts and your mother would lose everything." "So noble," I said bitterly. "Sacrificing yourself to save the Quinn family reputation." "Madison." "But now you have an out," I continued, tossing the envelope toward him. "London. Far away from this arrangement and me. That's not. Was any of it real?" My voice broke on the question. "Last night? The past months? Or was it all just making the best of a bad situation until you could escape?" Caleb stood abruptly and crossed to where I sat. He knelt before me, taking my hands in his. "Listen to me," he said urgently. "Yes, I agreed to this marriage for the wrong reasons. Yes, I applied for the London job as an escape before I even knew you. But everything that's happened between us since then? That's been real." Tears stung my eyes. "How can I believe that?" "Because I'm still here." His grip tightened on my hands. "Because when that job offer came, my first thought wasn't freedom. It was whether you would come with me. My mother seems to think you're leaving. Without me. Your mother has always seen what she wants to see." He released my hands to cup my face. "The truth is, I won't stay because I'm forced to. And I won't go unless you ask me to. This has to be our choice, yours and mine. No one else's." "Choice," I repeated, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. "I've never really had one before." "You do now." He brushed away a tear with his thumb. "What do you want, Madison? Not what your mother wants. Not what I want. What do you want?" The question hung between us, immense and terrifying. What did I want? For so long, I'd buried my desires beneath duty and expectation. "I want to write," I said finally. "I want to live somewhere that doesn't feel like a beautiful cage. I want." I took a deep breath. "I want you, but not because of an arrangement or obligation. I want you to stay because you want to, not because you have to." Caleb's eyes never left mine. "I want you too. Not because of any agreement or family obligation. Just you." "Then stay," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Not for them. For me." His answer was a kiss, deep and certain, that washed away the last of my doubts. Later that night, as rain continued to drum against the windows, we made plans. London was a possibility, but so were New York, Chicago, anywhere that offered us both opportunities. The future stretched before us, no longer predetermined by others' expectations. "There's something else we need to do," I said, curled against him in bed. "I need to confront my mother. To understand exactly what happened with my father's debts." "We'll do it together," Caleb promised. "No more secrets." The next morning we drove to my mother's house. She looked surprised to see us both, especially on a Saturday. "Madison, Caleb," she said, opening the door wider. I wasn't expecting you. Is everything all right? We need to talk, I said, stepping past her into the foyer. The familiar scent of lemon polish and fresh flowers did nothing to calm the churning in my stomach. My mother's eyes narrowed slightly, but her social smile remained firmly in place. Of course. Shall I have Maggie bring us some tea in the sunroom? This isn't a social call, Caleb said, his voice quiet but firm. We have questions that need answers. Her smile faltered. What kind of questions? About my father, I said. About the debts, the arrangement with the Westons. All of it. She glanced around as if checking for witnesses, then nodded toward her study. In here. The room was exactly as I remembered from childhood. Imposing mahogany desk, leather-bound books lining the walls, and a large portrait of my father hanging above the fireplace. His kind eyes seemed to follow me as I took a seat across from my mother. What's brought this on? She asked, smoothing her silk blouse in a nervous gesture I recognized from my own habits. I overheard your phone conversation yesterday, I said, about finding someone more suitable for me after Caleb leaves. You misunderstood. Stop, I interrupted. No more lies. I want the truth about why you forced this marriage. My mother's carefully maintained facade cracked slightly. I didn't force anything. I provided you with security. By selling me to the highest bidder? Madison. She looked genuinely shocked. That's a terrible thing to say. Then explain it to me, I demanded. What happened when Dad died? What was this debt that only marriage could repay? She looked away, focusing on my father's portrait. Your father was not the man you remember, she said softly. Thomas Quinn was charming, brilliant with people, but reckless with money. When the market crashed in 2008, he lost everything. I know about the crash. You said we had to downsize. Downsize? She laughed bitterly. We were ruined, Madison. Everything was gone. The beach house, the investments, even this house was mortgaged to the hilt. When he died, I discovered he'd borrowed extensively from Richard Weston to cover his losses. Caleb leaned forward. My father never mentioned personal loans. Not personal, my mother clarified. He used Weston Financial, took out loans against collateral that didn't exist. He falsified documents, Caleb. The revelation hung in the air between us. Are you saying my father committed fraud? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. If it had come to light, his reputation, our name, would have been destroyed. Richard agreed to cover everything, restructure the loans, in exchange for certain assurances. A merger of the families, Caleb said. Initially, yes. Our remaining assets would eventually transfer to Weston control. But as you two grew older, Richard became fixated on the idea of joining the families through marriage. She looked at me pleadingly. I fought it for years, Madison. But when you were rejected from that writing program. I wasn't rejected, I cut in. I was accepted. With a scholarship. Her eyes widened. But the letter. It said. I saw the real letter, I said. Did you intercept it? Change it. She had the grace to look ashamed. I did what I thought was best. You needed stability, not some artistic fantasy in New York. You had no right, I whispered. I had every right, she countered. I'm your mother. I protected you the only way I knew how. By lying to me? By forcing me into a marriage with a stranger? By securing your future? Her composure finally broke. Do you have any idea what it's like to lose everything? To discover that the man you loved left you with nothing but debts and disgrace? I did what I had to do. Caleb's hand found mine, squeezing gently. Mrs. Quinn, my father may have covered the financial aspects, but this marriage was never part of any legal arrangement. It was an understanding between families, she insisted. An understanding that ends today, I said firmly. My mother's face paled. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm going to live my life on my terms now. If Caleb and I stay together, it will be our choice, not because of some deal made over my head. You can't just walk away from this. The Westons. My father has no legal claim over Madison or your family anymore, Caleb interrupted. And he knows it. That's why he's been trying to control me instead. Richard will call in the debts, my mother warned. You'll lose everything. There's nothing to lose, I replied. Dad's been gone for 12 years. Any statute of limitations on his financial improprieties has expired. And this house? It's just a building. It's not worth my happiness. Tears slipped down my mother's cheeks. I was trying to protect you. No, I said gently. You were trying to protect yourself. Your reputation. Your place in society. She didn't deny it. I'm going to write, Mom. I might go to London with Caleb or New York or somewhere else entirely. But I'm done living according to your fears. You've always been so much like him, she whispered, looking up at my father's portrait. Dreaming impossible dreams. Maybe his dreams weren't impossible, I suggested. Maybe they just needed time. We left her sitting in her study, surrounded by the trappings of the life she'd fought so desperately to preserve. As Caleb drove us away from my childhood home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Are you okay? He asked, reaching for my hand. I think I will be, I replied. What about you? Your father. I'll handle my father, he said with quiet confidence. I already spoke with him this morning. You did. He nodded. I told him I'm declining the London offer. That I'm staying with you, wherever we decide to go. How did he take it? About as well as your mother, he admitted with a slight smile. But he'll adjust. They both will. That night I opened my laptop and began to write. Not a short story this time, but the beginning of a novel about a woman finding her voice. The words flowed faster than they ever had before, fueled by truth and possibility. 2 weeks later, I received an email from the MFA program in New York. They'd heard about my recent publications and were willing to hold my place for the upcoming fall semester. As I read the message to Caleb, his face broke into a wide smile. New York it is then, he said. I've already been researching firms there. Are you sure? What about your job here? He shrugged. I've never loved finance the way I loved music. But I'm good at it and there are plenty of firms in New York. Maybe I'll even take some piano classes on the side. We're really doing this, I marveled. Making our own choices. We are, he agreed, pulling me into his arms. Starting now. 1 year later. Are you ready? Caleb asked, straightening his tie as we stood at the edge of the garden. I smoothed the simple white sundress I'd chosen for the occasion. More than ready. The small gathering before us bore no resemblance to our first wedding. No elaborate decorations, no hundreds of guests, no orchestrated performances of happiness. Just 30 people we truly cared about, sitting on white chairs beneath flowering trees in the garden of our new Brooklyn brownstone. My mother wasn't among them. Our last conversation 6 months earlier had ended with her refusal to endorse this rebellion. Caleb's parents had declined as well, though his sister had come, bringing warmth and genuine congratulations. Last chance to back out, Caleb teased, offering me his arm. Not a chance, I replied, taking it. As we walked together down the simple aisle, I caught glimpses of the life we'd built in New York. My writing classmates from Columbia, cheering enthusiastically. Caleb's new colleagues from the boutique investment firm he'd joined. The elderly couple from downstairs who brought us homemade bread every Sunday. The officiant, a friend from my workshop, smiled as we approached. Friends and chosen family, she began. We're gathered here today to witness Madison and Caleb as they renew their vows, this time on their own terms. Caleb turned to face me, taking both my hands in his. The gold band on his left hand caught the afternoon sunlight. Madison, he said, his voice steady and clear. 1 year ago we stood before strangers and made promises we didn't choose. Today, I stand before you and our friends to make promises I choose with my whole heart. Tears pricked my eyes as he continued. I promise to support your dreams as fiercely as my own. To build a life with you that belongs to us and no one else. To love you not because of any arrangement or obligation, but because loving you is the freest choice I've ever made. When my turn came, my voice trembled slightly. Caleb, you came into my life when I thought all my choices had been taken away. Instead, you helped me find my voice again. I squeezed his hands. I promise to stand beside you as your equal, your partner and your friend. To remember that love isn't a transaction or a duty, but a daily choice we make together. As we exchanged rings, new ones chosen together, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The tears in that bridal suite seemed a lifetime ago. Later, as our small gathering celebrated with champagne and cake in our garden, Caleb pulled me aside. I have something for you, he said, leading me to the quiet of our study. On the desk sat a package wrapped in simple blue paper, the color of his eyes. What's this? I asked. Open it. Inside was a bound book. My book. The novel I'd been working on all year. Now professionally printed and bound with my name on the cover. It's just a single copy, he explained as I stared in shock. But I thought you should see what it will look like when a publisher picks it up, which they will. How did you? I have connections, he said with a smile. An incredible faith in my wife. I traced my name on the cover, emotions overwhelming me. You know, they say arranged marriages never last. Do they? He pulled me close. Well, ours technically didn't. It died the moment we chose each other instead. Best decision I ever made, I whispered against his lips. Mine too. As we rejoined our celebration, I caught sight of my laptop on the desk, open to a new document. The cursor blinked at the top of a blank page, waiting for the next story to begin. But for once I wasn't in a hurry to write it down. Our real story was still unfolding, one chosen day at a time. Later that night, as we swayed to quiet music in our living room, I rested my head on Caleb's shoulder and smiled. They say arranged marriages never last, I murmured again. But the only thing that ever felt arranged was my silence, Caleb finished, remembering the line from my novel. I looked up at him. And now, he said, we write our own ending.